Well, let's start. It's a Workhuman session, making work human. So we all talked about our professional background, but of course we are human beings. So is there maybe a fun fact, one or two fun facts you'd like to share with our audience about you, which is not work related? Let's start with you, Paul.
Fun fact.
I caught you off guard. I know we didn't talk about this.
I'll maybe say that I sound a little bit hoarse today because I'm a lifelong Newcastle United supporter, and I was at St James's Park last night watching us get Champions League football, so I've managed to get that in on the conversation. So there's my fun fact. 42 years for Newcastle United.
Brilliant.
Congratulations, Paul. It's a big
deal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's funny you asked that, Mihaly. I know that this wasn't teed up, but one of the things we did about 20 months ago was we ran a program through the employer brand piece, which I'm responsible for as well, where we added personal tidbits into people's email signatures. So there's 3 or 4 things about themselves before their job title. So that, with new ways of working and people, with different working arrangements, it allowed us to connect, with each other, in advance of meetings. And lots of our customers have interacted with that as well. So I'll give you 2 of my 4. I'm a history nerd. And as my kids are getting a bit older, I'm also an uncool dad.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, well, it's not fair if I don't share mine. So one of my fun facts is I love sourdough baking. So if you are a passionate home baker out there, reach out to me. I'm always happy to swap some recipes. And this is actually, for me, it's also kind of a well-being. It's very closely connected. In fact, if you visit HR Congres magazine, HR-Congres, you see one of my articles is about well-being and sourdough baking and how it helps along the journey, because in a way, it's a kind of mindfulness exercise.
I'd probably... one of my hobbies is Scottish country dancing. I'm a qualified teacher. I met my wife dancing in a display team 35 years ago. And we've got a YouTube channel with 60 plus videos of us dancing actually all over Europe. So that's my form of well-being, let's say.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Gentlemen, the topic of the panel today is what key lessons HR executives learned about employee well-being from 3 years of unprecedented disruption. And let's start with you, Paul. You're having training, research, and well-being facility at Gestamp. How do you see our leadership challenges changed in the past 3 years that impacts both the well-being of the leaders and, of course, people around them?
Yeah, we found that one of the biggest things is that we don't have the benefits of sort of hybrid work and that type of thing. We're very much a big, strong manufacturing plant, so everybody within the business predominantly needs to be around the process 4 or 5 days a week. So we've done lots of different activities. One of the things I think I would like to mention really from our business point of view was our young people. I think we came out of COVID, or during the period of COVID, we have sort of 60 plus young apprentices working for us. And most of them in their first year predominantly stay at the college. And what we found was that some of these, we assumed there was an element of safety or solitude when these young people were working from home during that COVID time. We didn't sort of take the implication of problems with Wi-Fi, problems with other family members being around them all the time. And we really saw a degeneration of their low levels of degeneration of mental health, but also their progression within their course, if you like. So we took an active decision to bring them on site every day, put transport on, bring them on site, put them into a large room following all the COVID legislation. And the change and the difference just by bringing them young people together on site in a room together was just outstanding. So I think that was our kind of first protocol, but then obviously setting up strong milestones along all the young people's learning programs to ensure that regular communication takes place, and providing sort of mentors and coaches along the program and regular interventions. So I think from a snapshot, that's a real big thing for us. That's a real strong learning, long learning path for us as one element.
Thank you. And Jeremy, you having well-being at Standard Chartered Bank, but you have a very interesting sort of a dual role, because you're also in charge of rolling out flexi working globally across 85,000 employees and of course their families. So It's an interesting combination. How does flexible working and well-being kind of falls under the same umbrella in your organization?
Well, you're right. I actually don't see it as a combination. I see it as very much joined up. And our thinking about hybrid working is ultimately that it's part of supporting social well-being, and actually also helpful towards mental, you might say, physical and financial well-being at the same time. So there was a program that we're rolling out to get the options, the flexible working options, both in terms of time and location. So hybrid working, but also flexibility of time where it's possible. Rolling that out around the world. We by the end of this year, we're going to have essentially done it everywhere where it's practical. A couple of markets it's challenging, but and what that will then position this as part of just our way of working. That actually hybrid working, the flexibility that we can offer people, will be a part of our support and taking pause. But I think it's very interesting when we think about different groups, how they want to access that flexibility in different ways. And we might equally have made assumptions about different age groups or different types of groups of employees and what they were looking for from the flexibility. That's not necessarily been how things have transpired. And likewise, if we've got a graduate group or a younger group, actually, generally speaking, we're seeing that's a group that does want to be present and working together. But we're also looking very much at caregivers, older groups. What we're aiming for is that individuals can choose flexibility within business constraints, you might say. But as far as possible, we can offer that choice to them, and the offer of flexibility is in itself a great contributor towards their well-being. So that's why, in my mind, these things are not two separate, as it were, projects. They're one combined element that we can actually, as part of our support for well-being in general.
Terrific. And in fact, from the poll we just did with audience polling earlier on, in fact, flexibility to choose some sort of work arrangement, of course, it's one of the most contributing factors to the good employee experience, as well. Majority of our attendees feels this way. But of course, there are certain business constraints. So how do you balance business priorities versus giving ultimate employee flexibility? That's a key challenge, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, what we've done is actually ask the businesses to, as it were, set out the boundaries beyond which we can't go. I mean, we've got, not quite in the same way as Paul, but we've got some colleagues who actually, they can't do their jobs from home. So we have a trading department who were in, basically through the whole pandemic. They were required to be in. There were particular regulatory constraints on that sort of activity. Likewise, in many parts of the world, not in the UK, but we have retail branches. Well, yes, there's a lot of retail activity that can be done remotely, but the concept of the teller in the branch is something that can only be done, in person. And so we had our businesses set out what are the constraints, the sort of outer boundaries, and then within that, looking at individual flexibility. Now there's a little bit of give and take required from what's going to be effective at a team level, but that's really the balance that we're and then that's not straightforward, I'm going to say, but that's the conversation that we're looking to have, an intelligent, as it were, adult to adult conversation that allows people to accommodate their own, you might say, requirements, caregiving or whatever it might be, as well as the business requirements.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions to any particular members of the panel, please put it in the chat box and the Q&A box, and I will bring it up here. So make sure that there is a lively, interactive conversation. And David, this is what you get when you work for a recognition, employee engagement, well-being company, Workhuman. You get the easiest question, which is, what has the last 3 years taught HR leaders about creating the right culture for well-being to thrive?
I think what we've seen over the last few years is a lot of the kind of foundational work around our policies, adjusting our policies and whether that's, addressing the challenges of remote or hybrid work, promoting work boundaries, all of that stuff. So we're well on the way to that work. But what we're seeing is it's that fundamental connection to each other, that feeling of belonging. And a recognition program is a good way to address that. I think it's important just to touch back on what the gentleman said. I think, burnout is experienced differently for different workers. So when we're looking at, the organizational questions, employees through the data that we run, and, some stuff pinned in the handouts there. So like most employees are functioning on autopilot no matter where they work now. And hybrid workers have the most trouble staying focused. In our research, up nearly almost half, 48% have trouble staying focused. So you think, okay, get everyone back, on site as much as possible. But on-site workers have an easier time with focus, but actually lead the way in being mentally exhausted and drained. So nearly 3/4 of the research showed us that. So there's this kind of dichotomy, this weird problem to solve. So I think recognition is we feel is one of the most underutilized management and culture building tools to directly address those different challenges and those unique challenges that our employee base have. So this is big business, a $300 billion industry in terms of lost productivity and turnover. And the research that we did with Gallup found that high well-being and greater strategic recognition, it significantly predicts, whether our employees are going to be top performers, their perception of pay equity, and crucially, their likelihood to not be actively looking or watching for opportunities elsewhere. So that, a great strategic recognition experience can definitely buffer the toll that low well-being takes on employees' performance. So, I guess having that as a linchpin of your well-being strategy is something that we see, will definitely impact people in a positive way. And that's, that is productivity, retention, but crucially, it's belonging and engagement, and having a peer-to-peer recognition function to a point that was mentioned earlier is just a really great way for people who are really connected in the work moment, in the work experience, to recognize each other. So it's not just that top-down appreciation, it's all those, place-to-way interactions that you may be meaningful to an individual.
Definitely. Thanks so much, David. And of course, connections, peer-to-peer recognition, conversation. I mentioned earlier, I just came back from Amsterdam a week ago. We had the Employee Experience Forum, and one of the conversations we had, and when it turned to you, Paul, they mentioned we talked about the newcomers to the workplace. And one of the conversations we had about how young generation actually is happier to go in the office when seasoned professionals with more experience, the other generation, probably different social settings at homes, they make them sort of more reluctant to go in the office frequently, and hence this sort of a connection and transfer of knowledge, transfer of just the engagement and a connection with the team members is quite a challenge. So what is your case in the organization? How do you balance making sure that when you have new and young generation comes in the office, they have the right connection in a meaningful way with their team leader, whilst of course sort of appreciating the team leader's need for a more flexible sort of a hybrid working?
I'm maybe our company are in a position where the hybrid work, and we only allowed to do that 1 day a week. So there must be 4 days in the office.
Right.
But that still allows the departmental manager the flexibility with that person to decide when that day is, which, it doesn't need to be 1 day 1 week. It could be 2 days 1 week, none the next, 3 the next. It's a very, very flexible 1 day a week. So it tends to be that a localized manager and a young person will sit down and really map out. We're very strong on creating that sort of support for the customer's priority. That's the business we're in, if you like, but we've then got to make sure that relationship between the leader and the actual team member is strong. But we find that we have to change everything from recruitment all the way through the whole journey with the young person. Something as simple as we put a job advert out, people apply. We've noticed that within 2 or 3 days, young people are wanting a response. How have I done that? Have I been successful or not? Why have I not been successful? So we're trying to speed up that process because we kind of feel like young people are maybe just the new want everything quickly, but I think some of it's a confidence thing that they want to know if they've done well or not. And we do work with lots of schools and sort of UTCs around our area to help develop those social skills and interviewing skills, etc. So when people come on board, they're in a good frame of mind. And we focus on a behavioural programme as well as the educational side of things. So we feel that really helps the individual and the managers, and also putting our leaders on strong sort of emotional intelligence programs as well. So we don't just look at actual physical skill sets, we look at behavioural skill sets as well. So really strengthening the young people's emotional intelligence development, but also the leaders' emotional intelligence as well. But again, putting really strong data time milestones in the timeline as well. So like you say, it has to be structured, it has to be regular to make sure that the right conversations are taking place. Also letting them recognise that we have mental health first aiders within the business, as well as external support as well through colleges and universities. So allowing them the ability to communicate internally and share with their leader or somebody else in the business or within a college setting as well. So we try and cover off every angle if we can.
Indeed, you did mention earlier on when we spoke that how important it is to build the resilience in people and the resilience in leadership. It's one of the key sort of driving force in the organization. Yeah,
absolutely. We drive that behaviour from day one within the business as well. Day one.
Terrific. Jeremy, probably it's a question to you. Trudy's asking, how did you overcome perceived imbalance, inequity of support felt by those who can't work from home compared to their colleagues?
It's interesting. There's a sort of, you might say, an assumption perhaps in the question that those that can't work from home are actually worse off than those working from home. I think it's a balance. Actually, I'm not sure that there is an imbalance as such. It's clearly something slightly different. One of the things that we have been doing is looking at actually the value of the workplace. Now, I'm not a fan of perhaps a workplace where one is expected to spend one's whole life. But what we are looking at, we've got a program, a property program, which is called Twice the Experience, Half the Space. So, we are giving up space because we're finding that we don't need it quite so much, but we're looking really to identify the value of the workplace for people to come in and looking at how we can foster those social connections, some of those practical sort of interactions, that serendipitous interactions. I've heard the expression, which I quite like. The idea that actually you're going to bump into people, and actually you can have a quick conversation that you wouldn't naturally do if you're working from home. And so I think in terms of support, we've got the same support available to everybody. It's a different experience, and we're looking really to help people to recognize the value of the combination, really dialing up the hybrid aspect. It's not all or nothing. And in that sense, I think people are able to, we'd like to say, get the best of both worlds.
Indeed. I recently watched an interview with the CEO of Cisco where he said, it's not about mandate to the office, but move from mandate to magnet. So make it worthwhile for people going in the office. There's a question for you, David, about considering the diverse needs of employees. And Ahmed is asking this question. Consider the diverse needs of employees and a strategy or framework that HR can use to effectively classify and tailor recognition. How can HR effectively classify and tailor recognition efforts? By doing so, we can ensure that HR initiatives for employee recognition align with their unique perspectives and preferences, ultimately fostering a positive and inclusive work environment.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the key kind of lessons learned over the last few years, right? Is that, that lack of inclusion, perhaps, we've made the mistake of not considering the needs of all the employees when we develop the wellbeing programs. So we put something together. Everyone's really excited about it. It's just to, get it out to as many people as possible. But, have we really taken into account the unique challenges of all our employees? So not just from a hybrid remote perspective, but different diverse backgrounds, different abilities. So our implementation of these one-size-fits-all programs, while doing immense good for the majority of the workforce, do leave some people behind, perhaps. So a big part of that is inconsistent communications. So, is it a big bang announcement? Are we consistently and continuously communicating the importance of well-being to our employees? And just to pick up on one thing Paul said, because it's definitely something that, triggers me slightly, like the resilience and the conversation about resilience. that's a we problem, not a me problem. So, what I think what we've seen is like, stress levels are high, burnout levels are high. Let's just give everyone some resilience training and okay, off you go. You're resilient now, go and figure it out. And not including people in open dialogue, soliciting feedback and help understanding like, what are the problems? What are the root causes? And for sure, we will equip you with tools to better handle those situations. But also, as an organization, we need to look at the stress factors and what's, organizationally, what's causing the need for more resilience. So I do, see a huge, increase in resilience training on offer. But, that's on part of the solution.
Maybe I can just jump in there. I guess a related point. I mean, one of the things that we did during the pandemic was to try to dial up not just our reactive support, our employee assistance program, our mental health first aiders, our medical plans, and so on, but also the proactive side. So looking at, we work with Unmind as a sort of mental health education tools and sort of workspace support for people, just to help people with their own ability to manage stresses and their own well-being. And our next step, I suppose, is to look, as David, you were saying, about trying to get at the root causes, because there's almost no point in, you don't want to put a sticking plaster on a broken bone, as it were. What we're trying to get at is, can we identify where are the sort of root causes of potential poor well-being, and other things that we can do there. So it's more about, having done reactive, we've done proactive to some extent, and we're now looking at, if I might call it reductive, what are the things that we could do actually to reduce stress within the workplace, and identify what are the causes of that we can address from a behavioral and an organizational perspective.
And do you mind me asking, Jeremy, how are you gathering that information? Is that, is that bottom up comms as well? Are you out in the employee base, asking people directly?
Yes, I mean that's the so we're just at the stage of looking at running quite sort of targeted surveys. So I mean, our employee listening survey, like everybody else, we run an annual survey, but it's fairly thin in terms of what we learn about well-being. We get a sense of people's stress levels, but we don't get at the underlying causes in any sort of really useful way. And so we're looking at some research to try to drill down. We'll probably work on some pilot markets where perhaps there's been a greater incidence of stress or what we sort of perceive to be burnout, and then trying to get at, well, what is really causing it? Is it something that we can tackle from a workplace perspective?
Terrific.
Dave, just on the no problem. Just on the resilience side of things, I think we take quite a pragmatic view on resilience. We put a title of resilience, like you say, David, and I think from our side of it, we're an automotive company that focuses on the continuous improvement type thing. So we really focus on, if there's a problem, how do you break the problem down, how do you resolve it and find a solution to that. So some very pragmatic tools and getting young people involved with continuous improvement activities and workshops and that type of thing. But then, so they understand the problem, how to break it down, how to manage it effectively. These are young people and our leaders, but we're on the back of that, the softer side of things, of understanding the feelings that are involved with a problem, if you like. So it's like you say, you put a title on it, but in reality, it's what the problem is. You're going to expect these problems coming up potentially, being in the environment we're in, how to deal with them, how to resolve them. Then on the softer side of things, what do you expect from a personal feeling point of view, and how to deal with them, and how to maybe express and discuss and try and resolve them as well. So I think quite a pragmatic view. There are tools for young people to use as well as our leaders as well. If that makes sense.
Terrific. So I'm cautious of your time. We literally have 1 minute left. So if you were to give just one advice, just one sentence as a kind of a parting comments for our audience of HR leaders and business leaders being on this webinar, what would you suggest to them when they go back to the office or being in the office right after the session? Where should be the focus? David, let's start with you.
Well, I would definitely advise some sort of recognition program, clearly. But that, if you don't have one, start small, get a sample group, unlock the benefits of that. But the big thing for me is measurement. So whatever your program is, whether it's conceptual, measure your benchmark starting point. If it's iterative, what have you learned? What measurable benefits can you take back to your leadership to show that this is working and it's not, just something, a box to tick. So, good data collection and measurement against demonstrable ROI would be the big thing for me.
For me, it would be regular, transparent communication in all forms of communication, whether that's through team leaders with teams, whether that's through, we have televisions around the site, we have email communication, we have texts, information goes out with salaries on a monthly basis. So I would just say regular, positive, strong communication for me.
And I guess for me, I could steal what I think David said earlier. It's absolutely not one size fits all. You've got to reflect the huge diversity of needs that people have, and offer as much flexibility as you can in terms of means of access, actually even means of communication. People consume information in such different forms. Don't assume that everyone wants to watch a video or listen to a podcast or read a document. All of those have got to be used. And indeed, the solutions, the support has got to be varied as well.
Wonderful insights. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I think the audience took lots of value out of it. Certainly, there are more questions are coming in, but I do encourage everybody to reach out to Jeremy, Paul, and David on LinkedIn. You guys are there available. And with this, we are concluding the Reimagining Wellbeing and Recognition online forum. This 90 minutes just flew by so quickly. It's been a fantastic session. Thank you so much for your valuable contribution. Thank you, everybody, for joining the session. And certainly thanks for Workhuman for supporting this amazing initiative. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.